Well, you know, you'd probably have to ask the directors that I'm a trustee of what makes a good trustee. Yes. What I hope to say is that it's someone who fundamentally believes in the organisation. I think you have to check yourself against mission, values, objectives, and be sure that the fit is really good, because you're going to give your time and energy free to support that organisation. Beyond that, I think there's a good self-reflective nature, understanding what skills you have and you can bring, and when you need to step back and allow somebody else to come in, because you really don't have that expertise. I think building a good board around you, a good team, and playing together as a team. So I don't like to be on boards where business is done somewhere off to one side and then people come back into a room again. I like to feel like everybody is part and parcel of the conversation and the decision making all the way through. So, you know, honesty, authenticity, trust, I think is really important too, and I hope that I bring some of those qualities to the boards that I'm a member of.
I think it doesn't work if it's like, it'll be good to be on that board because it'll be a stepping stone to somewhere else, or it'll look good on my CV. That doesn't work. That's not helpful, and not helpful and could be a very detrimental way, because it requires you to actively invest in what they want to do and actively want to see that company expand or change or develop over time, and see what those changes are, and be part of implementing those changes. So you have to be passionate about the thing that you want to do. And for an arts board, I think you have to like art. I think you have to be like creativity and like people wanting to be creative.
Yeah. So as trustees, we are ultimately responsible for the organisations for which we're a trustee. So you have to know that it's being run correctly. And if you're not sure, then ask a question. And if you're not sure, then ask another question. I've seen many a board meeting when trustees all nod in agreement, and then one of them puts up a hand and says, "But I don't understand this." And then they all go, "Oh yes, I didn't really understand that either." Don't be one of the ones that just goes along with the view. Ask a question. It's a good question, and I think that the ingredients are not just with the board. They've got to be a combination about the vision of the organisation, the values which they hold dear, and trustees knowing why they're on the board.
The experiences that I've had with other people, and what I think I can contribute to boards that I've sat on, but certainly have learned from others, are when you have, you know, your values are around being generous, having generosity, having integrity, and being responsible and accountable. And in order to do those things wholeheartedly, you need to be committed. You need to be willing to do the work. You need to be willing to immerse yourself into the organisation, to develop relationships with other board members who are outside of just the meeting touch points, but you know, responding to the chief exec, responding to the chairperson, responding to your other peers on the board around very particular needs, but also being sincere in the way that you develop relationships. So, you know, so that you're not transactional about it, but actually you're saying we're a team, we're doing things together, we have a responsibility, we're generous with our time, we don't usually get paid to do it, we don't even get usually the benefits of a volunteer, even though we are a board of volunteers. You know, there is this expectation, and it should be. And you know, that's the only way that these kind of arts charities survive and these arts organisations survive, is on the generosity of those members. And the worst thing that you can do is take up a space just for the namesake and then not contribute. So I think that the responsibility, the generosity and the integrity of board members is essential in order to make a board work, and everyone has to be aligned to those kind of values in order for that to happen. I think that empathy is the key thing that I would talk about. Understanding the landscape within which we work. So there is very specific language and channels in which we operate, an ecosystem in which we operate. That is, for example, the creative and cultural sector. So understanding that language, understanding those partners, understanding those people that make it up.
I think that everybody on a board is like a good orchestra. Everybody there should be able to contribute something in order to make that organisation really flourish. and should have an insight into how they can do it from a particular specialism. So not everybody on the board knows everything. There are people who contribute in different ways. But actually, I think a lot of the early boards I was a part of, there were a lot of people who had either been on a board for a very long time and sort of forgotten what value they could bring to that board, or they were doing it out of a sense of duty, but they weren't necessarily contributing. I think boards not contributing is as much down to the executive of the company not providing them an opportunity to be able to contribute and to be able to provide something of value than it is to those individual members. And when I say contribute, I'm not talking necessarily about money, although money is always lovely. It's about those board members being valuable to the organisation and its future planning, and making sure they're able to provide the sort of guidance and governance that they were brought along to. There's a story that I always tell about an older lady who was on a board when I was first starting out, who used to bring sort of breaded things along to the meetings, like cakes and some bagels and things that she used to cook. And one meeting she called up on the day of the meeting saying that her oven had broken down, so she wasn't going to come. And I think over time her role on the board had shifted from a contributing member to that to someone who basically was doing the catering. It's a very extreme example, but actually that board member, when the board was retooled and reworked, actually went on to be one of the most valuable members we had. She was incredibly useful with contacts, she was incredibly good at fundraising, and had incredible sort of personnel insight. It's just that none of those skills were being utilised by the setup that we had as a board. So I think my advice would be that, you know, everybody has an amount of value to give. It's about giving them the right environment in order to be able to contribute. It's a lot like putting together a rehearsal room, that you're creating an environment and a climbing frame on which people can be creative, on which people can contribute and do their best works.